Okay, now that we're into the home movies, you're going to see some cars on there. You'd probably gladly trade your wife for one of them, or I know you'd probably trade your mother-in-law for some of these cars. We're going back into the early 50s through the late 59s on most of the video. This is our total security force right here. This gentleman, all he did was just walk around all day and eat hot dogs. We never had any problem out there where it warranted having more than one security officer. Notice the wide tires on this dragster going off? Now, Santa Ana had a quarter-mile drag strip and a little over an eighth of a mile to shut off in, and they had the dog leg to the right when you shut off. This gentleman here recorded all the times. When you came back after your run, you walked up, give him your number, and he would give you your time slip with your time and ET on it. Initially, the drag strip was set up to get the street racers off the roads in Orange County. They had a rolling start because when the cars came out off the street, we found a standing start was too hard on the rear ends in the cars, and too many of the guys were getting towed home. So Hart said, okay, we'll let you have a rolling start for a while. This is C.J. Hart climbing out of our very elaborate timing tower onto a hearse. That's right, that's a hearse. We used to keep all of our equipment in the hearse, our timing equipment, everything in there. Notice how ecstatic this fella is about receiving this trophy. Gentleman doing the sign up here is Don Parkey. He was out there from just about day one, signing all the cars up. This Mercury right here, this is Hambone. All you old timers will remember Hambone. He did the starting for us. Little 36 Ford looks like against about a 50 Oldsmobile there. Here's one of the cars you'd probably trade your mother-in-law or your wife for, that Woody. Those are really hard to find nowadays. You notice with the ET light, batteries are set up on the side there, but we're still doing a rolling start. The first 3 years and a little longer, we had a rolling start before we started the standing start. Other drag strips started to come in, and they did a standing start, so we pretty much had to go that route. Ours was the first commercial drag strip in the country, so we pretty much could do our own thing as far as how we ran the strip. But when other strips came in, started to run, we found we had to kind of conform, so we all did. If the guy turned an ET at one strip, he would turn the same ET at ours as far as the length goes and how it was ran. You'll notice the neat modern design of some of these dragsters as they go by. I watched one of these videos where a friend of mine and his son said he wouldn't even drive one out of the garage. This little generator here was our sole source of power. Every so often it would conk out. We'd have to fire it up and get going again, because when that went out, PA went out, everything stopped. This is Ollie Morris. He was one of the first cars to go 144. The Yates Mickelson car turned 144, followed by Ollie at 144. Calvin Rice turned to 144, and Art Crispin turned 144. The first year the dragsters out there, and this video goes back to 52. The drag strip opened in June, or July rather, of 1950. The first dragster was really nothing more than a roadster with the body pulled off, but run by Dick Kraft. He had a street roadster, pulled the body off of it, turned 103 with it the first time he brought it out. That's quite fast back for 1950. Here we're at the finish line. If you get a little shot here, it's not panned too fast. Those buildings across the way, that's the Orange County Airport, which is now known as John Wayne International Airport. The dogleg had about an eighth of a mile, and then you got into dirt, so pretty dusty. This gentleman, C.J. Hart, he's one of the original promoters, along with Frank Stillwell and Creighton Hunter. Gentleman here is Ernie Porter. He was a mechanic for one of the Ford agencies. He had some Fords that ran good, and he would come out once in a while, and he said, I want to start the car. It's kind of fun, so we'd let him take the starter's flag over and start him. Of course, now this is long before the staging lights they have on the modern drag strips and the Christmas tree. Everything was done by hand. The starter had to be a little on the nimble side to get out of the way once in a while, because sometimes the stockers would really come off the line hard, and they go sideways before they would go straight. So it got a little hairy for the starter when he was getting the races underway here. You'll see them going down both sides of him here. Notice the jump start. You can't get away with that nowadays. Here's a nice modern dragster, white wall tires and all. There's our modern refreshment stand. How would you like to have that little Devon sports car back there? That'd be a nice retirement fund if you had that little sports car. Looks like a 44 there with a Carson top on it. Our bleachers wasn't very big. It could hold maybe a couple of hundred people, and that was it. This car just went through the lights. It was run by Calvin Rice. He was a national champion for NHRA in 1955. They had a flathead engine in that, built by Burl Wilson, The Slingshot Dragster chassis was designed by Melvin Dodd. The car you're looking at right now is run by Mickey Thompson. It has an Ardent engine in it, and Mickey came out and just made a few test runs. Notice the price on the admission, 75 cents. There's Hart checking out something in the timing tower. One nice thing about Santa Ana, if you came out and you got beat, you could still make all the runs you want. You didn't have to run just your elimination run and then park it. You had a special area where if you've been eliminated, you could come over, and then if they had kind of a lull between races, they would run some of the guys who wanted to run just for the fun of it, or maybe have a grudge match. That's one of the nice friendly things about Santa Ana. Some of the early fellows that came out that test out the drag strip were SCTA runners like Bobby Meeks, Fran Hernandez, Lou Baney. They were invited to come out and try out the quarter mile. Now, they're used to running like El Mirage Dry Lake, which is well over a mile, and Bonneville, which is about 5 miles. And it didn't take too long before they really got hooked on the quarter mile. This car run here by Joaquin Arnett, the Bean Bandit, they had a Studebaker engine in it. We kind of chopped his head off there, but we'll get a better picture of him later. This car run by Harold Dawson in the blue denim outfit here, number 666, which is also the sign of the devil. Back in the old days, Harold had a friend who was a chemist, and they experimented with nitric oxide. They had a bang tank on it, and when they hit it, it dumped a whole tank full of nitric oxide if they needed it. Here he's running against a GMC 34 run by Frank Iacano. And they had quite a few of those two. Every time they came out, it was just a guess as to who was going to win. Here's Calvin Rice's dragster, and we had the blown Chrysler in it at this time. That car with the Chrysler in it, with the blower on it, was the first car to go over 150 at Santa Ana. Now, I don't know about you, but if you look at the back of this car, which we'll see in a second, I wouldn't like the idea of sitting over the rear end the way he does, because that thing spun, and they had to lift you out of the car at the finish line. You could come out of that car with a real high-pitched voice. And I won't, since this is going to be watched by families, I won't go into it as to why he had a high-pitched voice, but I'm sure you know exactly what I mean. And I can see some father out there, his little daughter or son, what does he mean, Dad? Hey, I'm sorry to put you in a spot like that, but you'll have to figure out the best way you can to explain that to them, or maybe when they grow up a little longer. Anyway, that was the first car to go 150. The engine in that car was built by Doug Hartel. Here we have the Sidewinder of Jack Crispin going against Lefty Motorsbaugh in the twin-engine Chevy. Real late in the afternoon, and sometimes when it got real late, we had to have the spectators turn their headlights on. This car run by Creighton Hunter, got a side-mounted flathead in it, and as long as the engine ran, the rear wheels turned. All he had, he pulled the lever, lifted the rear wheels off of the ground. They'd line them up, get them pointed in a straight line. He dropped the lever, the rear wheels would go down, and the car just literally screamed off the starting line. Creighton won many a top eliminator with this car before he crashed the car and wound up in a hospital, and was lucky to come out of it. Here's Mickey Thompson getting ready to just make another little test run. If you follow the car through, you'll notice it makes a dog leg to the right, which all the cars had to do. If you're going straight ahead, you dropped off over about a 9-foot embankment. But you just follow the asphalt off to the right about 1/8 of a mile, then you're in the dirt. We'll have some good shots of the dirt a little bit later, and you'll see what I mean. Here's the Calvin Rice Melvin Dodd car again. The engine of this car is built by Burl Wilson. This is the car they won the '55 National Championship with. This is probably the country's first slingshot dragster. They started quite a trend there for a while. Initially, the drag strip didn't have any lapse time for about the first 2 or 3 years. But it didn't take long before some of the guys began to wonder, I'm going 85 miles an hour, and the guy that beat me only turned 80. How come? Well, Hart got kind of curious about that himself, and they put the ET lights in, and they finally realized it's not how fast you go, it's how quick you get down to the other end. So maybe the slower car would be ahead at the 8th mile, and then the faster car would be catching him, but he couldn't quite make up what he lacked on the bottom end. Here we're way up toward the finish line here. Here's Joaquin Arnett in the Bean Bandit car, Vic Smaldino in the four-banger. This is a car right here, Vic Smaldino. This was a fast four-banger. He ran over 130 with that car consistently. Here's Lakewood Auto Parts car. They had blown Arden in that green car just went by. That last car without a body on it was run by Jack Ewell with the Arden engine in it. If you want to look at a car without a roll bar, roll that back and then take a look at that car that preceded this one. There's no roll bar whatsoever, not even up to his shoulders on it. Jack was a SETA racer that came up and just got hooked on a quarter mile. Last little Dragster just went through with a twin engine car was also four-wheel drive. Here we got a Ford and a Chevy. Now we slowed the film down a little bit on those, so they would probably go a little faster than that. This was a very fast car run by Ed Lisinski and Son. Injected Chrysler, and they turned 149 with this car, just short of 150. Here's Ollie Morrison, the Smoking White Owl. This car is sponsored by Harvey's Auto Glass in Santa Ana. They ran a flathead on the drags with that rail and turned 144. They put a Chrysler in it, went to Bonneville with that white dragster, and turned 198 miles an hour with that. This is my father-in-law, George Hendricks, calling the winners back to me on the tower. And he would really get frustrated. Oh, here's a Jimmy engine in this dragster. He would really get frustrated. No, there goes Joaquin Arnett down into the in the dirt. We'll have to break off our little storage once in a while so we can identify the cars. You're going to get a good shot here of some of the dirt runs. Here they have the Arden in the car. There's Joaquin. They turned 144 also with that car. Here's a nice little shot of the drop-off. If you didn't dogleg to the left, you go off the drop-off. Here's Leroy Newmeyer, another dry laker that got hooked on a quarter mile. This car run by Clark Cagle. He handled our fuel truck when he wasn't running his car. He sold the fuel to all the hot cars that came out. We had one fella come back from the races. They came up with the tower and he says, I wish somebody would have told me about the drop-off. He said, I just kept on going straight and the next thing you know, I'm airborne. Here's Lakewood Auto Parts. This car turned 140 also. Bob Alston says, look at the roll bar. Not even up to his shoulder blades. That car has the Arden in it, and they were one of the better cars. This Roadster run by their Berdini brothers. Had a gas-burning flathead in it. There goes Clark Cagle again in these 32 Roadster. You're going to see Art Crispin come up here in a minute with the car number 25. Art was turning probably over 100 miles an hour right here when he went into the dirt, and he raised a pretty good dust cloud. Back in the old days, we used to have trouble with some of the stalkers that get down there into the dirt. They'd sit there and spin brodies or spin circles in the dirt. You would get so much dust that we couldn't see if it was clear or not. And we had to shut the track down, send somebody down, make sure that somebody wasn't sitting in the middle of the shutoff area, buried in all the dirt. You notice we're getting pretty darker on these runs. We used to have to quite often ask the people on the spectator side up toward the finish line to turn their lights on so we could see the finished elimination runs. Because especially when the days got real short, like in the winter, when it would get dark about 4:30 or 5, quite often we still had quite a few elimination runs to go. So the people would oblige us by turning their headlights on, and after you passed the headlights on, it got real dark all of a sudden. Pretty soon you're going to get a shot of a very rare aircraft that was developed out at the Orange County Airport called the Horton Wingless. This fellow walking up here with his striped shirt on the little girl, that's Burl Wilson. He built the engine in that car they won the championship with in '55. Here's a nice little shot of Ollie's car inside the cockpit, the engine itself. Ollie ran from flatheads to Chevy to Chrysler in that car over a period of the years. You know, some of you youngsters are looking at this thing and say, hey, you know, we're laughing at these cars, but hey, this was it back then. There's Chet Herbert. Chet Herbert was a genius with Jimmy engines. A lot of his cars on the track ran GMC truck engines, and they were unbeatable. This car here is a Roadster run by Creighton Hunter. It was owned at this time. The pictures were taken by Hill Alcala. That car started out as the track Roadster back in the 40s. And then it went into the drag races when Creighton bought it. Little coupe right here run by the team at Ruhr up in Lemke, running the 105, 110 bracket. Yeah, boy, that was a close race to call right there. Now they call races by the thousandths of a second. Back then, if the race was too close to call, we would just call it a dead heat. There's Peggy Hart in her little Roadster. She had a flathead in that for a long time. Then she finally got her hubby CJ to put a Cadillac engine in it because the flathead wasn't going fast enough. In the early days, I started announcing in 1952. They started in 1950, so while I was gone, I understand that a couple of highway patrolmen came out. There goes Joaquin. they brought their sickles out, and they asked if they could run them through on the one condition that the announcer wouldn't give their timeout, because they probably didn't want people to know how slow the bikes were. Here we have two T-Birds, both have Cadillac engines in, against the Jaguar. The Jaguar here is just a little bit outclassed, I'm afraid. The fastest bikes out there running in the 130 to 35 bracket. We had one fellow from Arizona brought his bike out, turned over 130, and he lost it just at the finish line. He skidded right over the little drop off there into the dirt, and it shook him up pretty bad. Didn't put him in the hospital because he had his leather outfit and the whole thing on. But you're going to notice a lot of these cars that are running, the bikes and the cars, all they have the T-shirt on. They're not even wearing protective gear like they do now. The first rear engine car was probably built by Bill Sanders. Built a four-banger, put a Model A engine in it, ran it for quite a while, and a friend of his named Bill Matz had a V8 engine, so they put the V8 in there, and he went from 104 to over 130. Here's Lefty Muttersbaugh with his twin-engine Chevy car. Lefty ran this car for quite a while with an Oldsmobile engine in it, sponsored by Money Oldsmobile in Arizona. Bring back a few memories. Some of you old timers watching these races, hey, I remember that car. Or maybe I had one fella that bought my video that I had earlier and said, you know, I recognize my own car in there. That's really neat. He said, I wore the thing out going back and forth on it. As we go along here and we can't identify some of the cars, we'll tell you a few stories from the old days, and if I break off right in the middle of a story, it's because I want to identify a car going through. We had Dean Moon bring a 46 Ford out one time, and he did a striptease with the car. In other words, they ran the car through, absolutely stock. I think they turned in the mid-60 bracket with it, 64, 5. They took the car back in the pit area, and they started to cut the fenders and the body and everything off. This fellow with the white jacket on here signing cars up, that's Emo Grisati. I'll tell you an interesting story about him a little later. So anyway, they kept making runs with the car, and they finally got down to where all it was the frame, and I had an apple box or something on there where the driver sat on. They went from 64 up into the high 80 bracket with a little stalker by just taking all the weight off of it. That Mercury race and the two Oldsmobiles got a Cadillac engine in it. That's why he's given the Oldsmobiles there a pretty good run for his money. My father-in-law, you really used to get frustrated. We'd run 3 or 4 at a time. He'd say the car in the middle. Which one was it, George? Well, it was a Chevy. Okay, but they're all Chevys, George. You know, you'd say, well, I just run 2 at a time, but we get real late. So sometimes we had to run 3 or 4 at a time in order to get the eliminations over. T-Bird with the Cat engine doing a pretty good little job on that Roadster. I don't know how it wound up at the finish line. There's Calvin Rice with the Bruin Chrysler. Came from behind to win that one. Here's the Bustle Bomb running against the Stickle. One of the about the only clip I have with the Bustle Bomb, with the twin engine car run by Lloyd Scott. You can back that up and take a look at it. It got a Oldsmobile engine in the front and a Cadillac in the back. In our earlier story on that, we had the still pictures. We told you the story about him not getting it shut off. This is Calvin Rice Melvin Dodd car before they even finished the body on it. They were still experimenting with it, you know, getting the chassis set up. That Dragster went blipping by there a second ago. I used to enjoy announcing out there. It was a lot of fun. The only part I didn't like about it, a car would go through, and I'd just be ready to give somebody's timeout, and the bike would fire up on the line and rap, 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 and I'd be yakking away, and the car would go, the bike would go by, and I don't think anybody could hear half what I said, because the bike would just about wrap it up just about the time I was giving a timeout on a car. So I kind of got in the habit of repeating everything a couple, 3 times, because the people in the bleachers would wave their hands at me. You know, what'd that guy turn? The Bernini Roadster. They had a lot of cars out there, the Bernini brothers. You'll notice that the majority of the cars have flathead engines in them, because this is before the overhead really came, where you could buy them fairly cheap and play with them. Only the real big buck people were able to run the Chrysler engines. Hart had a little motorcycle that he ran back and forth from the finish line to the starting line. Here he goes, back and forth. Little Willie's here's got a flathead engine in it. That's Leroy Newmeyer in the Roadster. I'm not too sure what engine he had in it. We had trouble out there during the week once in a while. Some kids would get out, and just out of the sheer vandalism or what, I don't know, they would get out. We always left the wires strung up, and they would get out there with a hatchet and make spaghetti out of the wires. And before we could run the next day, we had to get out and run new wires out there. Fortunately, that didn't happen very often. But once in a while we'd get out there and the wires would be all chopped up, just like somebody took a hatchet to it and just started chopping away. Some of the panning on here is pretty fast. You got to kind of bear with it. I could either leave it out, or I left it in mainly so you could see some of the cars. Even though it's panning fast, you might recognize somebody you know. That was the Eldorado Cat engine in the T-Bird. Here's a flathead engine in a coupe. Going to have a picture of a car here a little later of a gentleman that ran out there. And oh, here's our clock. Back to that story. This clock, one sweep around our clock was 100 miles an hour. Anything above it was like 105, 110, 115. So that stopped in about the mid-90 bracket. I'd say it turned about 95. We had one gentleman come out with a 53 Ford running in the stock class that was should have had a flathead in it. And he was doing pretty good, just barely eking out the competition, but something in the car didn't sound right. And in the old days, when we first couple of years, you didn't have to open the hood. You just tell them it was stock, and they would take your word for it. And so I finally, this Ford, something didn't sound right on that Ford. So I called up the Hart on the starting line and told him when the car came up to run again, open the hood. And he had a big Eldorado Cadillac engine in that 53 Ford running against a little old flathead, so no wonder he was able to win each race. This is Jack Ewell making a run on a wet track ride here. Whenever we had to put up with a rainy day out there, we would tell the competition cars they can make some runs, but they had to take easy runs. We let the stockers run, because running back and forth on the wet track, they would kind of suck the water out of the track and it would dry it off real good. We had one fella come out with a stock car, and something just didn't seem right every time he made a run. And I asked Hart again, open the hood. He opened the hood up, and on the reservoir for the windshield wiper, he had a line going to the base of the carburetor and sent it to the windshield wiper. And what he did, when he pumped it, the early windshield washers had a little button on the floor you pump when you wanted to get water to your windshield washer. And he had alcohol in it. Berardini car again. The Berardini run about 3 or 4 cars out there. Here's a 55 Bird with a Cat engine in it. This car, probably the little stock Bird would run 75 to 80 with a little 312 V8 in it, but they put the Cat in, they would run almost 100. Pancho Gonzalez was also one of the, so we had quite a few celebrities come out to run their car, and Pancho came out with a 34 coupe several times, and with his Cat engine, took his class at 110. Here we are riding in the little Ford Lac of CJ. I'm sitting behind Peggy in the rear seat, looking over her shoulder, and we're just making a nice, easy trip, about 95 miles an hour down the quarter mile, just to give you an idea what it's like. Now, here we are coming back up off the little drop-off into the return road. Little pink pickup truck here run by Andy Parks, just a stalker. He didn't race it. Andy had a ice cream shop in Santa Ana, and we always used to announce on the PA system, stop at his shop on the way home. They tried to get this Roadster fired up, and they finally opened the hood and say he hadn't pulled the rags out of the carburetor. So they finally pulled the rags out of the carburetor, and they got it going so they can make a run. The 32 here is run by Frank Iacona. He was having a hard time beating Harold Dawson with this modified. So, oh, look at the roll bar, the lack of roll bar, I should say, in that dragster. So Frank Iacona built up that 32 with a big Jimmy in it, And it was a real good run between Frank Iacona and Harold Dawson, but the two cars were pretty evenly matched. Here's Vic Smaldino in the Giant Killer. That's Fritz Voigt in the Chrysler rail right there on gas. Fritz ran consistently over 130. This car run by Harry Duncan had a big Chrysler engine in it. Beautiful car, and they couldn't get the engine started. So I was going to leave it out. I said, no, even if he didn't run, it was a nice shot of the car. Here's Bob Mandel, run a Corvette with a big half-inch stroker in it, and Hayden Prophet trying to get his sunglasses back. Hayden ran a 58 Chevy, ran a 37 Chevy. Later on, and went to win some of the the Nationals championship meets with his Chevy. Oh, later on, he went into jet cars with his son driving. That's fog you see down there. When the fog would roll in, we could still see to the finish line, but we couldn't see past it. So we had somebody way down the other end and would holler to me, okay, Don, all clear. We'd send some more cars down. So they look like they're disappearing into the fog, which they are, but they can still see the finish line. Once you get down there, we can see all right. Gentleman with the sunglasses on is Creighton Hunter, one of the owners of the Dragstrip at the time. Later on, Creighton and Frank Stillwell, they both sold out, and Hart became the sole owner and operator of the Dragstrip. Again, we got some super stocked up stock cars with the film sped way up. Looks like they're going to go 400 miles an hour. Little did I ever realize I'd be doing a video with this. I wouldn't have played around with the speed because it kind of blows it. This fella here is Tom Ritchie. He's probably won more stock cost trophies out there than anybody. Tom was an excellent tune-up man. He had a 57 Chevy. He won just about every Sunday. He got protested just about every Sunday. And every Sunday he went home with a trophy in the back seat and protest money in his pocket. They never could find out if, I use the word if, he was running anything illegal. They never could find it. The gentleman right here in the white outfit is Harry Field. That's his wife driving the Mercury right there with a flathead engine in it. And Harry weighed about 100 pounds more than his wife, so he let her do most of the driving. They had a club called the Throttle Queens that used to run the cars out there all the time. We had a young fellow come out named Manuel Coelho. He had a twin-engine dragster. First of all, he ran two flatheads in it, turned about 130, 35, and later on he put some Chryslers in it, went over 140. Well, I'm not too good on pronouncing names once in a while. And I heard a little knock on the bottom of my tower, so I hollered down, and the gentleman below says, sir, I'd like to correct you on how you're pronouncing my name. He said, my name is Manuel Coelho. Well, I said, okay, I'm sorry, but how am I pronouncing it? Well, you're pronouncing it Manuel Coelho. He said, all of my friends down here are kidding me about that, so I made a correction the next time around and got his name right. But he had a real nice car. I wish we had some pictures of it with a twin-engine car. He sat right in the middle, dead center, with a flathead in on either side, and then later on with Chryslers. So I try to be very careful on how I pronounce names, but once in a while you don't do too good. You blow it. Little Plymouth right here, run by Fullerton Muffler, had a small Dodge engine in the car. He would run up in the 90 bracket. At run El Mirage Dry Lake, it would run 115 to 20, that little Plymouth. This car, again, started out as a track roadster in the 40s, went to the drag races with Creighton Hunter, and while it's being driven here, it was run by Hill Alcala, had a flathead engine in it. And somebody here just they hit 149 on our clock, and I don't remember who it was, and I have no pictures of the car. Here's a Chevy engine with a rod sticking out the side of the block. So I think he's kind of done for the day. Do a little engine swapping here on the Lakewood car. I had a Corvette, had a Paxton supercharger on it with fuel injection. And we took the blower off of my Corvette and put it on Hayden's 37 Coupe right here. And Hayden went from 94 to 112, and he went from the mid 14-second bracket to the low 12s. I never did run my Corvette with a blower on it because I was afraid it might blow. It felt so healthy. I had aluminum flywheel and headers on it, but I was afraid to race it for fear it might blow up, and I didn't have the money to repair it. Here's the tank right off of the dry lakes. This is the way they run the dry lakes with this car. You see cars nowadays up at the dry lakes are running well over 200 miles an hour with a belly tank configuration like that one had. This 35 Coupe right here's got a Chrysler engine set way back in it. This car right here is run by Doug Cook. He's the king of the B and the C gassers. This is a buddy of his, kind of a bird dog. And Dougie's got a Chevy engine in this. It runs from Howard cams. And got a 471 blower. Here's the Sidewinder of Jack Crispin. It's chain driven, got a supercharged Chrysler in it, 6 carburetors, and this car really moves off the starting line. Here we have Doug Cook with the 37 with the white walls, and Hayden Prophet with the 37 with the moon wheel disc in it. And for a while it looks like Hayden's ahead of Doug, but then the 471 probably could pump a little more air than the Paxton, and from here the angle looks like Cookie went on to win that race. That Paxton setup was a nice setup on that Corvette. Really fast. And just driving it on the street, I picked up a hitchhiker one time and took him for a ride. And I couldn't resist getting on it in low gear, and he lasted about 1 block and he wanted out. Here we are behind the Lisinski car again. And you notice it doesn't have really a tall roll bar on it. It's they didn't have the rules and regulations back then regarding the height of roll bars, and quite a bit different now. The roll bar has to be certain size metal, certain size diameter, and as you fellows who race the cars know as well as I do, that the roll bar is one of the main concerns about building a car. Back then, if you had just anything even resembled a roll bar, you could get by with it. From my vantage point up on the tower, I could see the gate there where the people came in, and I could also see before they came in. And once in a while I would catch from my vantage point, I could see somebody get out, they would open up the trunk, and 3 or 4 guys would pile in the trunk of the car. And so when they came in the gate, I'd holler down to the gate, "Hey, that 58 Pontiac that just came in, bring him right up, or he's going to be our guest for the day." And we park him right in front of the bleachers for about 10 minutes and let him bake. Look at this car right here, all the writing has on it. And this car is run by Elvis. And from the looks of the bonnet he has, or the box he has on the carburetors, I would say he had a blower on it. Could you get another little shot here of the engine? And the carburetors are all boxed in, so my guess is he had like a Paxton or McCullough supercharger on it. So anyway, after they had sit in front of the bleachers for a while, they would start banging on the trunk, and Hart would go down, let him out, and he'd let everybody in free just for having a little fun with him. Of course, the crowd would pick up on it right away. As soon as they parked a car in front of the bleachers, they knew that there was a car there with a trunk full of people in it. And they just couldn't wait till they hear the guy start banging and let it out of this thing. And Hart, you couldn't do that nowadays, you get sued. So anyway, so Hart would go over and let him out and say, "Okay, you guys are in free, don't worry about it, no charge." We'd have our little fun with him. The fastest Buick ever ran out there that I can remember is run by Jarvis Earl. He started out running it in a 36 Chevy that run up on the 120 to 25 bracket with a 36 Chevy with a straight 8, and he built a dragster up later for it, and he ran 129 miles an hour in 53 running a straight 8 Buick engine. We had another gentleman come out with a truck, and he went through. I glanced at the clock. The clock said 112. I said, "Oh, I didn't reset the clock." So I announced no time. A little later on, the fellow came up with the tower. "Hey," I said, "Yeah, what's the matter?" He says, "You missed my time." I says, "No," I said, I guess I did. The clock ran 110. I said, "But I think I forgot to reset it." And he says, "What's wrong with that? I run that everywhere I go." And the truck was run by Charles Eaton, and what he had was a supercharged Chrysler in this truck with an automatic, and that was his everyday work truck. And boy, you can bet he had a lot of fun with that. And he had a bumper on the back that weighed anywhere from 100 to 300 or 400 pounds, depending on which bumper he put on to get traction. If he had a strip that was a little slippery, he and 4 or 5 other fellows, they put a real heavy bumper on the back of it. And he ran 105, 10 miles an hour with that street legal truck way back in the 50s. You Chevrolet guys, did you ever stop to think that one of your men designed, we had a little battle between Chevrolet and Ford. Chevy's best, no, Ford's best. And the guys are always bragging on the Fords. Hey, I got a set of Ardens, boy, that's the best thing that ever happened to Ford. Well, you can tell them if you don't already know it. The Arden overhead that was so popular on Ford was designed by Chevrolet engineer Arcus Duntov, Arc Dun for Arden. So next time you hear somebody bragging about Arden and how good they make a Ford run, well, tell them, yeah, they ought to make it run good because the Chevy engineer designed the darn thing. You see a lot of Arden engines in these cars, and it's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that until about 5-6 years ago. We were discussing Ardens, and a friend of mine who's an Arden Chevy fan, he said, yeah, Arcus Duntov. He, the same one that designed the Duntov cam, designed the Arden heads. Before we had the Santa Ana Dragstrip, they used to race on a little abandoned touch-and-go landing. I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. The touch-and-go landing strip the Marines used in an area called Mile Square. It was called Mile Square, but the touch-and-go landing strip was a triangle. Each leg was about a quarter mile in length. And the Marine pilots from El Toro would come down, touch down, and take off. Just kind of a touch-and-go landing. And some of the fellas caught up on that, and they would go out there and they'd start racing out there. And it really became more and more popular. And pretty soon they were drawing crowds out there of 400 or 500 people. And some of the top cars that later became dragster drivers were racing their cars out there. And this is Frank Stillwell. He's one of the co-promoters of the Dragstrip. Frank sold out later to C.J. Hart. So anyway, the Marines came in one time out there. I guess they had some planes that wanted to use the touch-and-go area, and there were so many people there they couldn't do it. So they called the MPs back at El Toro. MPs came out. The MPs came in one end of the area, and everybody left the other area from the other way. And one of my very good friends, Melvin Dodd, forgive me, Melvin, and Yvonne, but Mel got all the way home, drove his 40 Ford all the way home, and when he got home, he realized he left his fiancée, Yvonne, standing out there. Here's a couple of four-bangers. The four-banger on the right lane was the very first four-banger that I know of. Was designed by Bill Sanders. Bill Sanders designed that. So I don't think Mel still knows how Yvonne got home. She did okay, but true love, it came through. They got married and lived happily ever after. And it was kind of funny. I asked Yvonne about that sometime, and she said, oh yeah, she says, you forgot me out there. Really know how I stand. These shots here, this kind of random shot, the day's over. That's my 52 Ford, nice and stock, and everybody's kind of getting ready to go home. So this is at the end of the day, putting the trophies on, getting pictures, taking everything down. Look at the 36 Ford right here with the Carson on it. That's another one you probably trade your wife or your mother-in-law for. This 36 Ford is run by Jerry Hart. He's the son of the promoter,